Let's now get into our conversation this afternoon, and it's all about Rhino Charge 2026, which will be the 37th edition, and it's going down next weekend in Samburu from May 29th to May 31st. And we want to talk about a team that is quite not new, but quite young, because they will be participating in this event using an electric car. That's why I'm saying it's quite young. That is the team of EV Explorers, and joining me is Andrew Waititu to talk about that. Good afternoon, Andrew.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
First of all, let me apologize for calling you Edwin, and when we met, I called you Richard. I'm so sorry about that. Yes, let's get into this conversation. What's Team EV Explorers?
So Team EV Explorers is, like you say, kind of an old team, but using new technology now. We have been doing the Rhino Charge since 2002. So we have a bit of experience, but for the most part, we have used a traditional vehicle. Our main car was actually a Jeep with a big V8 engine, typical of most Rhino Charge cars, petrol driven.
Yes.
But last year we decided to flip the script a little bit, this being an event that is meant to be around conservation, around the future of our environment. We thought, why not try and build, or rather enter an electric vehicle. And we couldn't find something that would fit the bill, so we decided to build it, and it was built right here in Kenya.
Built from scratch?
From scratch, by a company called Silent Savannah. They specialize in transformation of traditional vehicles into electric vehicles, mainly for game drives and things like that. So your game drive vehicles are now being transformed into electric cars. So they're the ones who helped us build this car.
Andrew, you've been in the game since 2002. What inspired you to get into, Rhino Charge? Most people would rather do Safari Rally.
Yeah.
What inspired you to get into Rhino Charge?
So Rhino Charge is unique because it's never the same, number one. It is a lot of fun, not just for the spectators, but also as participants. It is very challenging in the sense that it's not your typical race where you're trying to get somewhere as fast as possible. So what they do is that you have 13 checkpoints, and the goal is to get between the checkpoints in the shortest distance. So literally as the crow flies.
Yes.
So you could come to, you're trying to get from one checkpoint to the next, and in between there's a cliff, there's a river, there's all sorts of obstacles, and your work is to try and keep the car, in a straight line. Because at the end of the day, you'll spend 12 hours out there, and maybe the winner usually would do probably below 40 kilometers. So it takes a lot of work, but it is a lot of fun. And you get to see the country in places that you probably would never be if you are left on your own.
Yes, so how do you prepare this electric car for Rhino Charge?
So last year, we didn't have much time from the time it was ready to the time the Rhino Charge actually took part. So we learned a few things. We did 5 out of the 13 checkpoints. Unfortunately, because we were still learning, the electric motor has a lot of torque. And that ripped apart the transfer case, basically the center differential. So towards the end, we only had two-wheel drive, and for Rhino Charge, you do need a well-working four-wheel drive vehicle. So from that, now what we have done is that we have improved the transmission, and we now have heavy-duty components on all differentials, lockable differentials. We have improved the winches, so we have both front and rear winches. And then testing. We have had now time to test the vehicle.
Yes.
Even last weekend, we were out testing in pretty tough conditions, and we are happy with it now.
Speaking of which, you've said that last week you were out testing the vehicle in pretty tough conditions. I mean, when you go to Rhino Charge, you have to go through mud. There's lots of water. How do you, make sure that it doesn't interfere with the vehicle? Because this is an electric car. Managing it is different from, the normal car.
Sure. So one positive thing about the electric car is that it has fewer moving parts. So there's fewer things to break. And I think with your mention of water and mud, here we are wondering how does water and electricity mix?
Yes.
So the first thing is obviously to make sure that we have insulated and isolated any components that transmit or hold power. So the batteries, all the components are insulated against water. And we obviously will do as much as we can to prepare the car for those kind of conditions and test it and see, what happens. So we have done it. We have driven the car through very deep water, no issues at all. And we are hoping where we are, it'll hold fast and steady.
Now that this will be the second year for you, using the electric vehicle, you've been in the game since 2002. What has been the most challenging thing about Rhino Charge?
I think the most challenging thing is you only really know what you're dealing with when you're out there in the bush. Because, like I said, the terrain is one thing. You deal with wild animals. You deal with insects. There's a time we were, going through the bush and hit a tree, and this nest of ants landed into the car.
Yes.
And obviously, everybody had to get out of the car very quickly. But you deal with many things. So you don't really know what you're going to deal with until you're out there. And that is the challenge. So you'd come to a section, especially in the early morning when there are no tracks of other vehicles, you are making the tracks. So there's nothing to follow. Everybody's running their own race because nobody starts from the same place. So that in itself creates a challenge that is different from anything else.
How did the off-road community, people that participate in Rhino Charge, react to the first time that you entered this vehicle into the competition? What did they tell you?
So first things, obviously there's a lot of interest. And I guess one of the weird things, and also we have had to learn about dealing with our car, is that it's silent. It's completely silent. So you cannot hear it. And the way the Rhino Charge works is that you have some of the team members, literally they're called runners. They run in front of the car to look at the terrain and try and direct the driver through the easier route that the car can use. And if you're a runner and you're running maybe even just 100 meters ahead of the car, you can't hear it. So you don't know where it is. So you have to use whistles or something to attract attention of the vehicle. So obviously a lot of people were interested to find out how would this thing actually perform. It wasn't a bad outing. Like I said, we did almost half the checkpoints. And this year I think we will cause a bit of a stir more than last year. 13? Are you assuring Kenyans that you will do all of the 13? That is the plan. That is the plan. We want to finish this year.
Yes. Aside from that, when you take a look at this, and you're trying to, the message out there is environment conservation. How is this beneficial to the normal day car user?
So what we are doing is showing that an electric vehicle in the harshest conditions can operate. And the learnings that we'll have from that hopefully can be transferred into normal commercial vehicles. The other interesting thing for us is that last year we ran a completely carbon neutral camp. So we had the charging for the vehicle was through solar panels. We were storing energy for the camp in batteries. So also trying to show or to prove the point that it is possible to kind of step away from our traditional fossil fuels.
Do you see this becoming now a common phenomenon? Now that people are looking at you, and last year was a starting point for you using electric vehicles, but now going forward, if you complete this year's event, do you probably feel that we will be having more people getting electric cars now, using them rather than the traditional cars that were used in Rhino Charge?
I believe so. I mean, as you know, the fuel crisis that we're experiencing now has created a lot of interest in either hybrid or electric vehicles. We now have major manufacturers of electric vehicles based here in Kenya. And I think it's just a matter of time before they start to see how can we also prove that our factory-built vehicles can do this. So I do believe that very soon we'll be seeing a lot more EVs in the Rhino Charge.
Andrew, electric vehicles are very expensive. How do you manage to support this?
So expensive is relative because I think in the development of this car, because it is a specialized car, the expense of this car is quite different from anything that you'd get from the showroom. If somebody's walking into a showroom now, they will be buying a car that has been developed and built by a company that has been able to keep the costs of manufacturing much lower. The biggest expense usually in EVs is around the storage and the motors that drive the car. However, on the converse side, maintaining them is much easier than a usual traditional fossil fuel car because there's much fewer moving parts. So I think it's an issue of finding out, number one, how can we keep the costs, the acquisition costs, by maybe creating some incentives, maybe lower taxes, maybe better tariffs around the energy for people who are using electric cars and stuff like that. Because that will, if done at scale, will also reduce our dependence on having to spend so much foreign currency on importing fuel.
And something, when it comes to such events, they are very they require lots of, money to put up such a venture and, participate in that. How do you manage to get, partners to support you in this venture?
So we've been lucky in two ways. Number one, we have a very unique proposition in terms of what we are bringing to the Rhino Charge. We are still the only electric vehicle in the Rhino Charge, as far as I'm concerned, at least this year and last year. So we have had some fantastic partnerships and sponsorships from those partners, including people like the Kenya Breweries, people like KCB Foundation, Safaricom, Africa Practice, of course Silicon Savannah, who built the car, and other partners. So they have come on board in different ways, including cash towards the development of the car, including giving money, sponsorship money towards the Rhino Ark Foundation, which is obviously the bigger picture that we are trying to look at.
Yes, now that you mentioned about, Rhino Ark, tell us, why this event is integral in terms of environment conservation. That's the Rhino Charge.
Sure. So the Rhino Charge is probably the most visible part of what the Rhino Ark does in terms of raising funds. But there are lots of other events that they do to raise money. And what the Rhino Ark Foundation does, it initially started with looking at protecting our water towers, which are obviously critical in ensuring our rivers and our forests are safe. Secondly, and the second and more important, probably more important issue that happens with this is because they build fences to protect these water towers, is that they reduce human-wildlife conflict. So for the people who are living around these water towers, you find that their crops and themselves, their lives are also kept safe.
Are you giving back to the society?
We always are. I mean, this is obviously a big part of what we do as a team, but as individuals, we are all doing our different bits and pieces in giving back to the society. With the EV vehicle, there's something interesting we are doing this year around giving back, which is we are running an innovation challenge specifically for TVETs, female students in TVETs in Nairobi and Kiambu. And here we are trying to see if we can identify 2 students who we can sponsor through the remainder of their education, but more importantly, we shall second them to the Silent Savannah workshop to see how electric vehicles are built, maintained, and sustained. And hopefully that knowledge will start replicating in different places in Kenya.
Andrew, as we wrap up this interview on Rhino Charge 2026, what's your message to the fans out there?
Please, if you haven't bought your ticket, buy your ticket right now. It is a fun event. It is a great family outing. Like I said earlier, you'll get to parts of Kenya which are beautiful, untouched, that you probably have never seen before. But be safe, get out there and enjoy the beautiful country that we call Kenya.
Is Team EV winning?
We are finishing.
You're finishing.
Yes.
Well, that is the most important message.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Andrew Waititu, for making time to come and talk to us on what to expect on the 37th edition of the Rhino Charge that will be taking place in Samburu from May 29th to May 31st. And as Andrew has said, it's a fun event. Come and see what Kenyan drivers have to do on such a terrain. And of course, aside from that, it's all about environment conservation. We'll be looking forward to that event next weekend and get to see who comes out as the winner and whether Andrew will have to finish all the 13 checkpoints that he's told us about. So we'll be looking forward to that. Thank you very much, Andrew. So we take a short break. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at the legacy of Bernardo Silva at Manchester City. That will be in a bit.